new economic situation where we'll have an economy backed by gold. And so why are these men having a hissy fit now? Because they realize that Trump saw something that's going to be the cushion that creates the soft landing. Not only is he going to back us by commodities, and we, by the way, are selling 250 million acres of land at an estimated value of 158 trillion, or maybe it's 153 trillion dollars. He's going to revalue gold, and it's on the books at a disgusting $42. And when that goes up to $4,000 or $5,000, that wipes out most of our national debt.
Floods our airwaves, but Faith and Freedom TV fights back with truth. Our bold content, news, shows, Bible teachings, worship, and films shines with biblical conviction and patriotic courage, free from globalist lies. We empower Christian patriot creators to share faith and liberty. Access thousands of videos on Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV, Android, and iOS. Join the battle at faithandfreedom.tv.
Welcome to Blessed Crusade. I got the pleasure of continuing to meet weekly with Larry Ballard, and we literally were finishing up a recording and when the Charlie Kirk thing happened. So we want to kind of address that. We had a bunch of other topics that are prepared to really dig into, and really just more of a discussion today versus using slides. Larry does a great job with developing slides, and we'll go into more detail on those at a future time. But right now, we're going to go into a series of things that set up the next 5 or 6 episodes of Blessed Crusade. But let's start with what's happened with Charlie Kirk, because I haven't had to get Larry's thoughts on this. Larry, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Absolutely great. I think I'm optimistic. Other people may be pessimistic, but I think everything is lining up just exactly the way God intended.
Yeah.
And in terms of Charlie, I'll make one comment and then I'll leave the rest of it to you. It's going to backfire. What I see already is happening is what they're doing is going to electrify him. He's going to become a martyr, and what he was doing is going to be multiplied many times over. So my hope and my prayer is, let's don't get mad at anybody. Let's don't get anxious or cause division. Let's just basically promote what he was doing and see to it that he didn't die for nothing. That's basically what I believe. Anyway, back to you.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's happened already, right? So when I had Juan O'Savin on a couple of days afterwards, that's what he was saying. It's already backfired, right? And so some backing of that, or some sauce, if you will, would be that the TPUSA had 900 chapters, right, that were in the colleges, and 1,200 in the high schools. So they started in the colleges and they went down to the high schools. And so you add those up together, it's around 2,100 chapters, right? Well, they've received, since the shooting, and this is as of yesterday, 37,000 requests for new chapters. So from 2,100 to 37,000, okay? If you just think about that, so you take 37 divided by 2, and you've got 6, that's 16x, 16x in the number of chapters. And just think about the current chapters, how they're going to grow. So this is that 30, 60, 100. Charlie's dream was to have a chapter in almost every high school and college in the nation, and he had no idea that it was going to take his horrible tragedy to actually make it happen. Talk about backfiring. That's backfiring, isn't it not, Larry?
Yeah. Well, let's look at a historical piece. You know, I always have to throw in a piece of history, right? So what did Reagan say, President Reagan? He said, we're never more than one generation away from losing our freedom. And what is that all about? What was what was he doing? He was trying to wake up the youth. And why? Because if you lose the leadership of a generation, you lose everything. The current generation, the millennials and the Zs, are going to be our future leaders. And if they're left-leaning communist, we're done. So now it's not too late. We're going to recapture those, and that momentum that he started. I didn't know the multiplication that you just added. I mean, I think already I can see that there are people being arrested. There are people that are losing their jobs by the droves. The impact is going to be absolutely monumental. absolutely monumental. It's backfiring. I think it's even causing more of a backfire than when they killed Martin Luther King. I think it's that significant.
Yeah,
And
this
it's that
this is this is the JFK or MLK of our generation, right? It's
Mhm.
that big. People don't understand. This is worldwide. That's just that the backlash has happened, right? And so this week, I mean, if you this, I don't want to get too, I don't want to sacrilegious, right, at all. But you have to parallel to what Satan was thinking when he killed Christ, right? He had to
Mhm.
put this hatred in the Romans' hearts, put this hatred in the Jewish leaders' hearts, and we're gonna just kill Jesus, crucify him. Yeah, I won, right? That's what Satan's thinking, and then all of a sudden, he resurrects from the dead. It's like, whoa! And now this is and then JFK, the backlash there, but we didn't know. Nobody was awake, right? MLK, probably another one of those things that was caused by the cabal. But now we're awake, and this happened. So I think you're right. It's going to have a bigger impact because people are going, this has got to end, right? This whole globalist. And again, I started this, Larry, back in 2018, actually 2017 on Facebook, but 2018 on YouTube, when I started my show because of Mockingbird Media. And because when I learned that they just lie to you to try to divide us, to get us to fight each other, right? And so that we
Mhm.
never recognize it's the cabal versus we the people. They say, no, you fight each other. It's right versus left. It's skin color. We talked about this
Mhm.
last time a little bit, and you emphasize it a little more. They can divide the Mockingbird Media, that the globalist control is designed to separate us and divide us and get us to fight, so we never recognize who the real enemy is. That's my thoughts. Any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, actually, what we were talking about before the show started, I've been working up and got ready to go. That's why I'm doing this umbrella. Let me give you a context. Beginning of the week, I'm going to be kind of running out of time here over the next few weeks because my publishers announced to me that my book is going to be being sent to me soon, and I'm going to have to take a deep dive and read it and get it ready so it goes up for publication. So I've been trying to get ahead by getting shows done. So I've queued up a number of shows, and one of the topics that I'm going to approach. I didn't know, but it ties exactly into what happened with Charlie. I'm going to do a whole series of shows on trying to get into the angst of the Generation Zs and the millennials. So what I'm going to be doing is going to my principal audience, which is the 50-year and aboves. Well, who is that? That's the mother and the father and the grandmother of the Generation Zs and the millennials, and their kids are frustrated beyond imagination, right? So in order to try to get to that audience, because I don't have it all prepped up like Charlie did, I'm going to try to go to their parents and their grandparents and say, are your kids frustrated because they're 29 and still living in your basement? Are you
Mhm.
frustrated because they're 29 and still living in your basement? Are you discouraged because you want to be a grandmother and your kid can't even afford to get married, much less have a kid? And what about what you learned in school and how you got out and you couldn't get a degree? So I'm going to try to take all of those points of angst and I'm going to try to wake them up, and I'm going to try to do it through their grandmothers and their grandfathers and their mothers and fathers. And that is going to take me down a rabbit hole, to be honest with, I really didn't go deep into. And that's the whole agenda of what Charlie was doing. I mean, I knew what he was doing and I was following it, but I never did a deep dive. And I
Right.
think it parallels exactly what I'm trying to do to wake the millennials up. And now we can bring both of those together. I think that this is whole time for the next, all the way to the end of this year at a minimum, is basically the time that God showed me 57 years ago. The truth will set you free. It will open your eyes. And I think this is the time of the whistleblower. And basically, what we have to do is look at the whistleblowers bringing us to the understanding that they've been dividing us, like you said, that they have stolen multiple elections, that we have people in that are passing laws that are not protecting us, but actually creating intentionally, there you go, intentionally division and creating angst and basically enslaving us. And so the more that comes out, here's what I'm also going to try in that ties to what Charlie was doing. I'm basically going to say, after I do the educational piece and get their grandparents to grab them by the ear and get them to come over and listen, then we're going to say, now guess what, folks? You now know the truth. It's pouring out. You're learning about all these things. Now here's what you got to do. We got to go back and we got to not let what Reagan predicted happen. We can't lose the generation. So when you
Amen.
look at the banks, they're going to lose the banks are going to close by the droves. Opportunity for people to come in and fill those voids. The corporations, look at the corporations that are collapsing. Look at the countries that are collapsing. Look at the governments that are being vacated. You know what you got? You got a complete turnover of the power structure of the world. And you know what you need?
Woo.
You need leadership. And it ain't come from people my age, and maybe not even people your age. It's going to come from the young. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to bring that out and say, you've got a responsibility. You need to get informed. You need to understand. You need to dig into this and find out what happened. And in the process, you'll find hope for yourself. You'll find what you could do, and maybe you can fit yourself into a leadership position. Maybe there's something in a corporation that you can get into that now that opportunity isn't there. Maybe you can get into government at the state or local or federal level, but we need an army of people who have woken up, who are informed, and who are willing to step and do what? Restore a republic. And what does that require? It means you got to have first and foremost knowledge. You got to have the truth, and you've got to be willing to make decisions that are not based on handouts. You're going to be self-reliant, and you've got to be able to come in and be a leader, and be a leader not because somebody's paying you gobs of money, but because you're going to do the right things. And so that's part of what I'm queuing up, and part of why I'm putting this umbrella over the whole big picture. So let
Yeah.
me shut up and
And I want,
go
yeah,
back to you.
yeah, I wanted to go back to the whole generation thing because I had a roommate when I was getting my MBA at University of Texas. Now, very liberal area, so he was a lawyer with a very liberal, and he was basically convinced, showing me that my point of view, which had become I'd become a Christian there, right in front of him, right as I was studying all these things, and the what was wild is that he basically showed how it was only going to take another 10 years before the Democrats completely controlled it because all the Mexicans were coming in, they were all Democrats. All the young people, they were all Democrats. All the millennials, that generation
Mhm.
were becoming Democrats. And it was Charlie Kirk and his organization that changed from 2020 to 2024. The young vote went from Democrat to Republican almost in a
Mhm.
big
Mhm.
way, mainly primarily because of Turning Point and all the work there. And then all of a sudden,
Mhm.
you have the Hispanics doing the same thing, moving from Democrat to Republican. And you see Tulsi Gabbard, you see Robert K. Jr. So this is like a God thing, right? It's something
Mhm.
that I was convinced. I mean, this liberal, very brilliant person got 100 on the LCAT, very brilliant person. Um, Basically was completely confident that his point of view and liberalism was going to take over the whole country. And that was 5 years ago, right? So it's now it's reversed. The Lord's doing something amazing here, Larry, is he not?
Well, I'll take it even a level deeper if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Basically, if you control the money, they say you control the world, right?
Right.
Well, where's the money come from? It's got to have a genesis. It comes from natural resources that are turned into manufactured goods that are sold that become the basis of our GDP. So what's happened? Basically, not only did they attack the schools and basically brainwash our children, but they took over the banks, they took over the corporations,
Mm-hmm.
they took over the elections, all the elections that were stolen, all the politicians that were put in, they took over the media, they took over all the spheres of influence. And part of what I'm going to be covering in the next few weeks as we talk is that changing? And yes, it is.
Yes.
I'm going to do part of one of the shows I'm going to do is going to pop people's brains. The 10 countries most likely to collapse in the near term. The 35 realtors, I mean, not realtors, retail organizations, big organizations that are closing, and it's not for the reason people think. They think, well, those are closing because they're retail. It's the war between online buying and brick and mortar. Yes, to a degree it is. But you know what it really is when we dig deep down? And this goes back to the millennials and Generation Zs. When they got out of college and they started applying their brainwashing, and they found out, oh, I can't get a job. I wasn't
Exactly.
qualified. They didn't teach me anything. All of a sudden, the reality gets into their pocketbook and they start to change. And then they just need a catalyst like Charlie to bring them over to clarify things. And so basically, where they're at right now, why are those retailers? 35 of the biggest, they're closing for a simple reason. 35% of the American population right now has a shortfall of about $5,000. This is coming from RFK, in terms of having enough money to meet the very basics for existence. So they're either going homeless, or they're racking up credit card bills. And so basically, why are these corporations, why are mid-range restaurants closing? Why are grocery stores closing? Why are pharmacies closing? Why are boutiques closing? Why are home improvement places closing? Because people have no money for anything that's other than an absolute necessity. And if we can tie all of those kinds of things back to what Charlie was doing, we can have a revolution. We can basically, he's now put the spotlight, and now people are going to be willing to listen to the other peripheral things that feed into this. And I think that we're going to wake up, and it's going to be quick now, very, very quick. The truth will set us free. That's what God told me when I had my near-death experience 57 years ago. I'll bring you out at the last minute. And now I want to basically go back to what you said. So I think it's so bad that I view America as when basically Hillary thought she was going to get in, they thought they had it done. They thought that we were on deathbed. We were like, I used to sell surgical supplies, and I go in and scrub into the surgeries, and I'm seeing a guy laying on the table, and he's just dead, black lined, and they've got the defibrillators out and trying to bring him back to life. We lost all the spheres of influence. We were literally a nation that was dead. And Donald Trump came in, and he's reviving us. And so we need to make the people understand, if we don't pay attention, we're literally going to have a catastrophic financial collapse. So Trump is here to basically oversee that bankruptcy, but there's different kinds of bankruptcies. He's going to give us a soft collapse versus the catastrophic collapse that the global financial elite wanted to do. So one of the things that you said you had 107 on, so I was recently had him on my show, and here's one of the things that he disclosed. When they thought Hillary was going to get in, Obama, he says this is a scandal that's going to be released. He says they have whistleblowers that are parked. And Obama authorized not only the money that was sent to Iran in those cargo planes a long time ago, but trillions of dollars. And a lot of it went to China, and they went to other nations. And what they were going to do was basically flood the United States with so much money that they would cause hyperinflation. You can't collapse a nation digitally with digital inputs into a bank. You have to flow so much money into Main Street that you collapse it. And that's what they wanted to do. So there's all kinds of truths that are going to come out that are going to wake people up. So with regards to Trump, I mean, it dawned on me, what better man to have in office than a man who cut his teeth dealing with corrupt politicians in New York, dealing with corrupt builders in New York, dealing with power brokers, and basically learning what they do so he could turn it against them. And then his six bankruptcies, if that doesn't make him qualified to oversee the bankruptcy of the United States, I don't know what would. So anyway, let me stop and go back to you, and then we can go into detail more on this or any other aspect of what we talked about before.
Yeah, that's really insightful about the bankruptcy and Trump's experience with having to work through that. And so I didn't realize he had. Did you say 5 or 6?
Six.
Six. Wow. Because
and maybe what we might want to do here is pause.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything that we've seen in Trump's first term or second term that says that from the get-go he was preparing for this, that he was laying the foundation so that he could keep his promise of saying, not only will I make America great, but I'll make America greater than ever? Can you think of any? I cheated. I've got some written down.
There's so many. It makes me wonder about. There's different types of bankruptcies, right? There's business bankruptcies. There's personal bankruptcies, and so was he? Do you have any different ideas about which one of those were personal versus business, and if he had both and experience with both of those?
To my knowledge, these were all business bankruptcies. I didn't get into detail on them. I don't think I need to, but basically, let me pull some things out of the air here that might let you see that he saw this coming and was preparing for it. right? So America became the wealthiest nation in the world in our centennial anniversary in 1876. And we did it. Now think about what he's doing now. And let's see what we did, our predecessors did back then. They woke up one day after having gone through a bankruptcy at the end of the Civil War, and they said, the only way we're going to get out of this is if we pose tariffs on Britain, 50% tariffs. And the American people said, my God, we can't afford to buy British products. No, that's right. So what did it do? It innovated the Industrial Revolution and it pulled us out. So now what's Trump doing? He's using tariffs again. And the tariffs are just leverage. And people are freaking out when he says 50% tariff on you and whatever. No, that's just his negotiation point. That's where he starts to leverage what he wants, which is maybe something to do with fentanyl, maybe something to do with trade, maybe something to do with borders, whatever. He's leveraging the tariff threat to get the things that he needs to get to put us in the right position to basically be able to have this soft collapse that he wants to have. And what are some of the signs? So in that regard, he was the one who forced the Supreme Court to hear the Chevron deal. And the Chevron decision basically reversed a previous decision and said that there's almost 6,000 patents that have been suppressed and kept out of circulation because they were claimed to represent a national security threat. In reality, what came out of that decision that he's queued up is that it wasn't that at all. It was that they threatened the revenue, the multi-trillion-dollar revenue of the global financial elite in regards to energy and in regards to control of technology and the necessities of life. So now what we did before was we invented the Industrial Revolution and made ourselves wealthy and shared that with the world. So what's queued up now? Now what's queued up is we can get access to those 6,000 patents. And Trump's people have come out and said, we have patents that absolutely work. They're just going to be brought to scale to get water from the air, to have free energy, to have different forms of transportation that are far more efficient. And then I chime in and I say, my son is in logistics, and so I know a little bit about part of that. I know that every product that we have ever bought in our life, without realizing the principal cost of that product was the energy it took to produce it and to ship it. And so if we go and get out from under the multi-trillion-dollar control of the oil industry, look what happens. Our cost of every commodity we buy, depending on the complexity of the supply chain, goes down 20, 30, 40, 50%. And so there's just one of the things that he queued up and is getting us ready. And then look at his big, beautiful bill. Everybody's slamming it. And look at the Genius Act. Well, now what's happening? Now you're seeing Russia and China have a hissy fit. You're seeing them call an emergency meeting to bring BRICS together. Why?
Yeah.
You know, they know what he's doing is going to work. They know that what he's going to do is come in at the end. We got the gold, and he's going to say, you know, BRICS, you aren't the only one that has gold. We're going to go into a commodity-backed system, and we're going to one-up you because we realize that the world wants to deal with a democracy or a republic, rather, not a communist organization. So that gives us a check mark in our box. And then they want to deal with what? The company that's been proven to be the innovator of the world. So money's coming in, $10 trillion dedicated to rebuild our manufacturing and our trade, right? So in comes the revenue. That's that magic wand that Obama challenged. What are you going to do? Restore the economy by waving a magic wand? No, I'm going to impose tariffs, and I'm going to force situations where nations realize they have no choice except to funnel their money to the United States, the absolute predicted winner of the battle that's going on. And then now what's he doing? Look at the Fed. He's putting massive pressure on the Fed. My prediction is that before he's out of office, the Fed will be gone, the IRS will be gone, NATO will be gone, and the UN will be gone. And we'll be back into a completely new economic situation where we'll have an economy backed by gold. And so why are these men having a hissy fit now? Because they realize that Trump saw something that's going to be the cushion that creates the soft landing. Not only is he going to back us by commodities, and we, by the way, are selling 250 million acres of land at an estimated value of 158 trillion, or maybe it's 153 trillion dollars. He's going to revalue gold, and it's on the books at a disgusting $42. And when that goes up to $4,000 or $5,000, that wipes out most of our national debt right there. But what these men and BRICS are realizing is that he, with the Genius Act and the big, beautiful bill and what he's announced, America will be the crypto capital of the world. He's trying to get legislation passed. It says if you guys invest in XRP and XLM and other ISO 22222 compliance currencies, cryptos, if they're companies that are in America, if you can get this passed, you will pay no capital gains. So here's the thing. People, if they trust the dollar, want to use it. They trust the United States. And guess what? For convenience sake, they want to have electronic payment systems. And now let's look to Africa. And Africa is now the most populous continent in the world, 1.4 billion people. They're not going to banks. They're going to be unbanked, and they just announced they're going to create a structure like the United States of Africa, where we're going to close all those borders. You can cross just like you do in the States here, and with no tariffs, just cross. And then they've announced we're going to a crypto-based electronic payment system. So if America is trusted, if America's currency is now valued by gold and silver, and we're the crypto capital of the world, here's what's going to happen. And Trump has set all this up. We're not going to come out of this as the sole reserve currency of the world. It's not going to happen. But we will leverage ourselves into coming out of it as the primary reserve currency, still having leverage to control certain things within the world. Trump has set all of that up. That is part of the structure of his efforts to create the soft collapse. Comments, Rick? That was a lot. You got anything you want to add to, or anything you want to challenge?
Yeah, I was just showing on the screen the 42.57 for silver. You've got gold at, and this is what's amazing. You said it was valued at what? So if I switch just to gold, you'll see here, gold right at the moment we're recording is 36.89. So it's like that is pretty crazy. It was right now. It's at what, Larry? That you said on the books.
It's valued on our books at $42.
At 42.
So, yeah, $42.
Yeah, that's interesting because that's what silver is now.
Yeah, I know. These people are looking at this, and all of a sudden it's dawning on them. Oh my God, he's going to pull it off. He's going to manage to go through a collapse and still come out the strongest nation in the world.
Wow.
And they're panicking. It's absolutely scaring them to death.
Yeah.
To death. And then a topic that I probably feel particularly qualified to talk about is real estate. Mm-hmm. So before I go in and just spill my guts, do you have any comments to make on your opinion of what's going on in the real estate market? Is it stable? Is it unstable? What do you think is going to happen in real estate?
Yeah, it's interesting because what the biggest thing that I think in that topic area that is the unethicalness, I would say, of property taxes, where you really can't even own real estate because of property taxes and the fact that they print so many dollars. It's caused with no more value, real value, if you haven't sold, right? So it's an unrealized gain and an unrealized tax, right? So you don't have any realized gain yet. But my house payment's gone up thousands of dollars, over $1,000, right? Mm-hmm. And so my daughter can barely even afford her house anymore. She's a brand new owner, first time home buyer, and hers has gone up like 30%, right? So that's a property taxes is a problem. I know you've talked about as we revalue the dollar that the prices are finally going to come back down, but your dollar is going to be worth more. But boy, what about does any of your analysis have anything to do with this whole property taxes? And are we going to still have property taxes in the future?
Oh yeah. Well, let's go back. Everything that's happening is all based on history. It's taking us back to our founding principles. So why did we come here in the first place? We wanted to have freedom of religion. Well, 501Cs took a nice slice out of that, right?
Yeah.
And then
one thing I want to just interrupt real quick is I just researched, and Trump's never done a personal bankruptcy. It's all been Chapter 11 of his companies being restructured, right?
Yeah,
so
that's what I thought was the case.
So you were correct. I just looked that up on the all right. So go ahead back to real estate.
I forgot what we were talking about.
Real estate.
So So, but what was it about real estate we were talking about? You asked me a question and I was about
Well, I
to
was doing
answer it.
property taxes and all the property taxes.
Oh, okay. So what I did is before I answered it, I was going back to our founding principles. So
Right,
we came here so we had freedom of religion, so we could have the right to carry arms, which they've tried to
right,
take away from us, so we could have freedom of speech, what they tried to take away from us. And what was one of the principal things that they wanted to do? They wanted to take away our right to own property. And so what are they doing with what's happening in real estate? I'll tell you what they're doing. They're taking us back to before we came to America, when we were in Europe and we were controlled by the nobility, and we were what they call serfs. And serfs were not allowed to own land at all. You couldn't own it. And basically, they called us peasants or chattel. And what is the definition of chattel? Chattel is a beast of burden, like an ox that would plow the field. Well, they consider us to be chattel. So now let's take your comment about personal property. So what really, in my mind, as having been a real estate broker, is that we came here and we tried to set up everything to give us all of those things. So when we set up our original real estate structure, it was based after the Spanish. It was based on Spanish land grants. It was called a odial ownership. And that meant that once you paid off a property, there was no such thing as sale as take rights. So basically, you couldn't have your house taken because of property tax, because it didn't exist. America was basically run by a sales tax. That's all we had. That was the only singular tax we had, because the Constitution said that it is against the Constitution to tax a man's labor. It is against the Constitution to basically charge him property tax. So let's look at an indicator. What is Florida doing right now? Florida is in the process of eliminating property tax.
yeah,
And I
saw
think
that.
Texas is beginning to do the same thing. So my answer is that's coming. And here's the thing, and I know I shock people when I say this, but having been in real estate and seeing many, many people lose their homes, people who maybe lost their job not because of anything they did wrong, but because the global financial leak caused a crisis that caused them to lose their jobs. And so then they couldn't pay their mortgage. And so the mortgage company took it. Or
Right.
maybe the homeowners association took it. They even have take rights. Or maybe the house was paid for completely and now they couldn't pay the taxes and the government took it. Is it fair? Is it equitable? Or is it a grand scheme to enslave us? Well, I consider it to be a grand scheme to enslave us, because if it was anything fair about it, they would simply say, so let's say on the tax bill, you owe $5,000. You get a $500,000 house. We're going to put it on the market at fair market value. And when it's sold, we're going to take our $5,000 and you can have the remainder. That's not what they do. They basically take the property, they sell it, they give you nothing, and some insider, 9 out of 10 times, picks up that house for a tax lien. So basically, the way you look at it is, here's the deal. No American in this country at this time owns a home. You are a tenant of the government, and you are at the mercy of the government. And if the government creates a financial collapse that causes you to lose your job and you fall behind, the government takes your home. So none of us own it. So that takes us back to what you said. Property taxes have to go. I've got a friend who was an engineer, and in his early youth, he built his own home, right? And since he built it himself, it was pretty cheap. He paid it off when he was very young. And what he said is, he had a mortgage for a few years, but he paid it off very quickly. And now where's he at? He says, my God, he says, Larry, he says, my property taxes are more today than I paid for my mortgage payment and property taxes when I built this home. So that's another form of slavery that is imposed upon us. All that's going away, folks. All that's going away. So the real estate, though, here's what I want to focus on in the next few weeks. It's what Reagan said. If we lose a generation, we lose our nation. And Carl Schwab, it's what he said. You will own nothing and be happy. So do you know what they're doing to the Generation Zs in terms of home ownership?
Elitist media deceives, but Faith and Freedom TV amplifies truth. Our world-leading platform delivers news, teachings, worship, movies, and music rooted in biblical values and constitutional patriotism, inspiring faith and liberty. We inspire, equip, and amplify Christian patriots to share powerful stories of faith, family, and freedom. With live events, thousands of on-demand videos, and access on Roku, Fire TV, Apple TV, Android, and iOS, we're transforming culture globally for God and country. New content is coming to ignite faith. Join our mission to counter deception. Visit faithandfreedom.tv and download the Faith and Freedom TV app today.
Are you aware of it?
Yeah, it's like almost the percentage of people that can get into new houses is extremely small, right? I don't have any stats.
Well, it's all contrived. Let me give you an example. Remember, the reason I do what I do and why I study history is because God showed me that in order to understand the events of today, you always have to go into the Bible, and you always have to go back maybe decades or even hundreds of years, because everything eventually repeats itself. So what they're doing is heinous. So I'm going to pick the real estate story up with COVID, with the launching of COVID, with the lockdown. And when that happened, interest rates were very low coming out of the '08 collapse, and you could pick up a house back then with a 3% mortgage. So think in your mind, I've got one house, and I'm going to have 4 pictures of it. And the first one, it's up for sale, and on the sign it says interest rate 3%, and it says the home is being sold for $200,000. That's the snapshot that we would take when COVID first hit. And now if we went to sell that same house today, that same sign would say interest rate 7%. And it would say asking price $400,000. So in that period of time, that house is doubled in price. And what does it mean? Well, it means that you can't save money fast enough to buy that house. You're almost locked out because the price has been going up so quickly. And then what's it mean? It means, when that goes up, it means your personal property tax goes up, right?
Yeah.
The property is reassessed. When you sell it, guess what happens? You made a massive amount of capital gains. And so you're getting hit again. So the whole system is working against you. So was that house twice as good as it was in today as it was in '08? No, it isn't. It's that the dollar has been rapidly declining, and depending on who you talk to, it's worth somewhere between 1 and 3 cents. So now I say, here's what's going to happen. We went out from under the gold standard in what? 71 under Nixon. And that's when the dollar was worth $1. And Trump is saying he's going to put us back under a gold standard. Plus, he's going to revalue our gold. Plus, he's going to revalue silver. Plus, he's going to sell off assets worth possibly $153 trillion. And so now the dollar is going to be worth $1 again. So when the dollar is worth $1 again, here's what I say is going to happen. This is my analysis. I say that we will go back to 1970 prices. And so I bought my first house in 1970. I paid $19,000 for an all brick 10-room duplex, 5 rooms on each side. The average price for a house in 1970 was $23,000. Today it's $420,000, 183% increase. And the average income today is $75,000. So now I'm a millennial. I want to buy a house, and I go out and I say I need to get a mortgage. And they say, well, how much do you make? And I say $75,000. Well, how much is the house you're trying to buy? $420,000. And they say, okay, great. When you get an extra $150,000, come back and talk to us because you're short. That's what's happening. That's what's happening.
Right. So
I lost your sound, Rick.
Yeah, I'm saying that it's usually 20% down as well, right? Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a conventional loan. So here's another thing. They're playing games with this all over the place. So let's go back and figure out with that comment how they brought the '08 collapse on us, and let's dig into some of the things they're doing for the current collapse that's going to be even bigger. So in '08, basically what they did is they created the predatory lending when basically Obama got out of college, out of Harvard, sued Citi for redlining. That's prejudice. And basically all of a sudden you could buy a house with no money down for the first time in history, with no income verification. All kinds of people who never should have bought a house bought it, but they were not conventional 20% down because there were nothing down. So you got an arm. So what was it? It was a trap, just like you trap a wild animal in the woods. They buy the house, and in 3 years, the arm increases, the payments double or triple, and you have massive foreclosures on millions and millions of houses. That's what they did to us in '08. They're doing something a little less obvious now. Basically, what they've done is working through Fannie and Freddie. You can go out and buy a house. You have to have 3% down. All right, so it's a little easier. But guess what? Back in the day, if you wanted a conventional loan, you had to have a credit score in the 700s, and you had to have 20% down. That's a conventional 30-year loan, fixed rate. So now they're letting you buy a house with 3% down, but they're letting people buy those houses with credit scores in the 500s, which means you're not a qualified buyer. I don't care what you say. You're not a qualified buyer. You're a risk. And so what they've done, this is not widely broadcast, is apparently, I'll use that word, it's hard to confirm this particular statement. Apparently, many of those homes have defaulted, and the banks have simply set on them. Remember, they're not losing any money. They're just sitting there. They're basically, that money was just printed out of thin air because they weren't ready to collapse the market. So there's all of these homes out there that we're unaware of that are basically technically in default. And so what else are they doing? Let's look at the commercial real estate market. They say they're liable to be bank closures. And when we get into the commercial market and into the apartments, that the losses are likely to be upwards of 90 to 100% default rates. And why? It goes back to COVID again, because we locked everything down. Everybody went home and worked out of their houses. And now you always have a longer lease on a commercial property. Minimum is pretty much 5 years, 10 years. They sometimes go all the way up to 30. Well, basically those properties are setting with 50% occupancy. And as those leases go up, there's nobody to renew them. So there's a catastrophic commercial real estate collapse happening. Then there's what I just described, that they're doing kind of a small bubble they're creating with what they're doing with the retails, where you can get into a residential with 3% down and a 500 and some credit score. But now here's the big thing. They've created an entire generation, the Generation Zs and the millennials, who they have structured the real estate markets to guarantee that what Carl Schwab says will happen. You will own nothing and be happy, except you'll own nothing and be miserable. Right. So let's look at what they did, and we'll break this down. This is the last thing I'll say on real estate. And here's what's happened. So since they got the interest rates down, they've been down for a decade now, and they've jumped up all of a sudden up to 7%. Now they're supposedly going to come down to 6%. And those housing prices doubled. What it's meant is that unless you've got an emergency, you can't sell your house today, because you're going to sell your house that you bought for $200,000 for $400,000 if you can find a buyer, because the house has not only doubled in price, but the interest rate has gone from 3% to 7%. So if you should sell, now you're faced with going out and buying a house at $400,000 and some thousand at a 7% interest rate. So basically, they flatlined the existing residential marketplace. It's just flat. There's always a few people that have to sell, but nothing like what you'd normally be seeing. And then what have they done on the other end? They want to create that generation that has lost all hope. That's the Generation Z and the millennials. So here's what they've done. It's absolutely heinous. But the good news is, as we get into the details, I'm going to show you that just like what they did with Charlie, this is going to reverse on them, and they're going to be so sorry they've done this that it's not even funny. So don't get upset, folks. There's good news. We're gonna end up winning. But here's what they've done. They have gone in and created giant conglomerates, BlackRock, State Street, even Warren Buffett just dropped $1 billion bet on the table, betting against the American people ever owning a home. So what have they done? They've gone out and let out billion-dollar contracts, multi-billion-dollar contracts, to build thousands of homes specifically targeted at first-time home buyers. That means generally below 1,400 square feet. But here's the kicker. None of those thousands of houses that are being built are for sale at all. They're for rent only. And they use AI to basically profile you, the buyer, to profile the area, to say what's the sweet spot to come in and get an economic income bracket where we can price them out of buying. They have to rent, and yet they have a little money left over, so we can raise the rent each and every month to make sure that rents always exceed any gains that they make in their salary. And therefore, here's what happens when the youth try to go out and buy. They have their computers, and remember, I was in real estate. So before that for sale sign goes in the yard, it's being entered into the MLS. And they're tied into the MLS and all across the country, and they know that house is coming in the market, and they're making a cash offer before it ever comes on. So they're buying it, and guess what else they're doing? Not only are they building new houses, but when that house comes on, the few that come on the market, they're buying it, and maybe they're willing to pay $50,000 or $100,000 over market price. Why would they do that? Because they want to change the dynamics of an area and turn that whole area principally into a rental. Right now, those BlackRock and State Street and their whole conglomerate, they control. I shouldn't say own. You don't have to own. You just have to control the stock. They control 85% of the S&P 500. The goal is by 2030 to own 60% of the real estate market. And so what they've effectively done is created a situation where there's no houses to buy on existing homes, and there's no houses to buy on new construction, because the companies like Pulte and others, the big mega builders, are entering into contracts with State Streets and BlackRock and so forth, and building houses that are for rent only. It's all going to backfire. All of it's going to backfire. And we don't have to think about how to do it, because America is always the last to feel the pain. And so there are other nations around the world that have been feeling the pain, and they're already taking action. And all we have to do is just follow what they've done and get Trump to pass some legislation. And all of a sudden, you're going to see BlackRock, Venture, all of those entities. You're going to see them utterly, completely, and absolutely collapse. We're going to find out the shenanigans that they've done, and in the many instances they'll go bankrupt on their own, and in other instances we'll take their assets. So basically that's what they're trying to do with this. And so that's why I'm going to go in and start to talk about the millennials and talk to the pain of all the things that they have, and talk about the solutions. So what else do you want to talk about? I haven't been watching time. I don't know when you would need to end this.
Yeah. So we're 45 minutes into this. So is there any last topic that you want to hit at all, or just
Well,
up?
let's see.
Uh,
I think the SARA is one thing, but let's keep that for a separate show. I think that basically whistleblowers are going to come out. Whistleblowers are going to basically be what wakes up the world. And Charlie, what happened with Charlie is a big, big, big part of that. It's going to make people willing to listen. So what would I prioritize as the things that I see are going to come out whistleblower wise that's going to wake the people up? I think the biggest thing is, from what I understand, we have always had the whole truth about the theft of the elections. We know the people who are involved in stealing the election from Trump. We know the role of Venezuela and other European nations, and we know what happened with the voting machines, and all that's going to come out. And we're going to find out that not only America's election was stolen, but a total of 72 nations around the world. And what does that do? What does that portend? That portends to the opportunity that I was talking about for the millennials. Once we find that out, we're going to find that judges can be taken out, that politicians at state, local, and federal were not elected. They were selected, groomed, and placed in through fraudulent elections. And whole governments are going to collapse. And that's where we need to wake the millennials up and the Generation Zs, so they can come in and fill those spots, and they can basically be the new generation of leadership. So I think that's going to be the catalyst, along with the financial collapse, that is going to bring this thing to a head. And just like a pimple or a boil, it's going to pop, and there's not going to be a thing they can do about it. So awareness, the truth is about to come out. And when it comes out, the people are going to stand up united, no longer divided, and we're going to know who our enemies are. And let's give you a couple examples of them. So do you know what?
I wanted to back up for a second. Talk
Okay.
about Psalm 2:8, right? Because we
Okay.
look at it as talking about Jesus, right? The psalmist, but it says, "Ask of me, and I will make the nations your heritage, and the end of the earth your possession." And if you really look at what's happening, where Jesus talked about he came for salvation, but he's going to come for vengeance next. And I believe on earth the heavens that this is gonna happen is that if we ask of Jesus, he will make the nations our heritage and the ends of the earth your possession. This is where I really believe that the millennials and the, like you're talking about, the Gen Zs are going to start taking dominion of these key leadership roles in all these areas of influence, right? So education, into arts and entertainment, media, these three big areas that have the biggest, we need to go take those mountains back, right? And that's where and it's not just in the United States, it's got to be worldwide that we take these mountains of influence back, right?
It's going to be. Well, speaking of that, perfect timing. I'm glad you brought that up. Let me give you a couple of examples, okay? So, have you heard of what they call ESG?
And I don't, not in the terms you're probably thinking.
Well, it's basically a program that comes out of the UN, IMF, and World Bank, and basically it's a set of criteria that says that we have an agenda coming from those institutions, so that we have an agenda for environmental, for social, and for governments.
Yeah,
And if you
that's
don't
what Black
apply,
does. That's what Black does. Yeah.
yeah, that's a part of it. And if you don't comply, here's what happens: the world runs on credit. You can't get any money, and you're in trouble. So what happened with Budweiser? Budweiser, the macho man, right? And they'd gotten to where they were number one beer in the country.
Yeah.
And then, in order to comply with ESG requirements, they slapped the picture of a transvestite on their can, and people were going out and stacking up cases of Budweiser and basically shooting it with a machine gun.
Right.
And guess what? They lost, I think the number is $73 billion. Then what happened to Target? They were forced into the same situation. They lost 12 billion. There's a list of about 20 companies that are less high profile that were forced into that situation and lost. So what was that? That was an uprising by the American populace saying, we don't want to be controlled at an environmental level, at a government level, or at a social level. And so we used our leverage, and look what happened to those companies. And then as the whistleblowers come out, and we find out, I know these are things you know about what the pharmaceutical companies have done to us. You think we're not going to retaliate against them and they're not going to fall? And then as we're finding out what the food companies are doing to us, you think we're not going to retaliate and they're going to fall? And on and down it goes. So the truth will set us free. All we have to do is there you go. You brought it right up. All we have to do is get the truth, and then we can understand that I go back to history, I'm sorry, where we fought the Revolutionary War and all kinds of people were killed. Many years later, after World War II, India said, we don't need to fight a war. All we have to do is do what America did after their Civil War. And they said, we're not going to buy English goods, period. We're going to boycott at every turn we can. And England will fall. And they gave them their freedom. They rallied around Gandhi, who was a lawyer and a spiritual leader. And guess what? That's what Trump's trying to get us to do as well. And if we will just rally and all this truth comes out, we'll find that we will resuscitate America. It won't be laying on the operating table dying anymore. It'll be up and looking like it could run a marathon. We're going to bring life back to the corpse of America, and we're going to do it by basically refusing to participate in our own slavery. Yeah. It's that simple. We're going to stand up and say no.
And awake public is what we fear most. Yeah, and
I'll say that again because you cut out. I didn't hear a word you said. You cut out. Can you repeat it?
Yeah, I put it on the screen. It says, an awake public is what they fear most. Is what Q.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. I wanted to kind of go through.
That's what's happening.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of.
So I got more we can talk about, or if you're satisfied, we can wrap up because we're probably close. I know you try to keep it an hour or less. So you want to wrap up with anything? That just kind of gives the people the big picture. A couple
things I've just talked about here. I put on the screen. Like the first thing is they teach you what to think, not how to think. That's what Charlie continues to tell the college students of why college is a scam right now, because they like in economics, they only teach you the liberal oriented economists. They don't tell you about all the great supply side thinkers, right? They teach you what to think, not how to think. That's one thing. Another thing you mentioned is that they never thought she would lose, right? This is something that Q said all the time, is they never thought she would lose. That is interesting. And then the other thing I wanted to point you to is that gold is at 3,700 and it's only 42 on the books, right? That is just an amazing sight. I just wanted to make sure you guys also knew that this is why I'm such a big believer in investing in silver. We talked about this in a lot of the episodes. I trust Kirk Elliott because he only does bullion, right? So call Kirk Elliott at 720-605-3900. Schedule appointment. Tell them Rick B2T sent you. They'll actually prioritize you. This is important, guys, because if you have any treasures, you don't want to have that deflation where your dollar, everything you have in the bank goes down in value every single day, right? And if they revalue this, Larry, I would imagine that if you had gold and silver being a better ratio now, that's why you'll as you do research, you'll see that. But you will see, like, for instance, right now, gold is at 42. I've been talking about this since when gold was at $22, $23, and it's almost doubled. But what's interesting is that what could silver do, it being in demand for as a commodity, as they move to revalue gold from 42 to 4,000 or whatever, or maybe even higher. I would guess that silver's a pretty good investment right now, Larry. Don't you think?
Well, I think it's a great investment. I'll tell you what I valued it at. And I was just pleased because I think 107 has the inside track that I don't. He said around $200. All I did is just sit down and I basically said, what's the historic ratio between gold and silver? And I said, what if we just brought that back to its historic ratios? I said silver would be a minimum of $200, and then there are those that are out there saying silver's going to be worth thousands, and I counter with that just with logic, and that is that the gold is a store of value, period, but silver is essential for a technological society, and if we're going to get these 6,000 patents, then we can't allow silver to go to $4,000 or $5,000 because it would price everything out. So I think there is a ceiling that will be placed on silver that'll keep it 200, 300, I don't know exactly, but I don't personally see silver going to tens of thousands. But if you look at it, how many silver coins can you buy versus how many gold coins? For if you went out and bought one gold coin and by the time you bought it, it cost you $4,000, and you bought silver at $40, you're better off by far doing that. And this is maybe one of the things that I'd like to say as we close. So I'm speaking to the Generation Z and the millennials out there who we're looking at a financial collapse. And so what I might say is if you have any discretionary money at all, why don't you try to get yourself some seed in the ground? So if you have a lot of money, buy gold. But I think the greater value is silver. So try to buy some silver. And then where else? Donald Trump said it himself on a show just a couple of weeks ago. We are going to revalue all the currencies because we have to have all nations' currencies be at a level playing field. So the one that I have pushed, just because like silver, I think it's the best ratio is the Vietnam Dong. Go do some research. And then what everybody is beginning to finally believe is that XRP is going to be the rails for the new financial system, and it's going to go up dramatically. So I would say to you, if you're struggling to try to save to buy a house, as this collapse comes, you want to protect yourself by having something in one of those three or all of those three assets. But don't take my word for it. I'm not an analyst. I'm not a professional broker. I just try to do research, and I think Rick is in a much better position to comment that on me. But basically, just try to do something to give yourself participation in the wealth transfer that's coming, and maybe you might make enough that when the real estate market reevaluates, bam, you might have enough money to buy a house.
Yeah, and so this is why I talk about calling Kurt Ellick and just get a free consultation. Because he does bullion and that is you can get the most amount of silver for the least amount, and it's totally liquid where you can resell it if you need to sell it all. That is one thing. The other thing I just wanted to show you is that U.S. debt clock is predicting the 5-year silver to be at 15.56 compared to $42, right? Now, you said, you think that might be suppressed a little bit, but if you put a 0 on the end of 42, that's 420, right? That would be the 10x increase. So are we going to get to 30, 60, 100, or are we going to get to the 10x? But most people say this is not going to stay at $42. So 42 versus 420 or 1500. The whole point being, guys, if you're one day late, you won't be able to participate in any of this, right? Same with the dong, and also I think you would the XRP dong.
Yeah, there's a comment on XRP. What Trump set up the Genius Act and all kinds of things to basically get us over. Well, our enemy, our adversary, in terms of trying to suppress the US dollar is the BRICS. They just announced they're going on XRP.
Right.
And so basically they're seeing the light. And the thing I guess I want to say about XRP is it's mandatory. We cannot go forward in a commodity-backed system unless you can fractionalize things, transfer purchases internationally for a fraction of a penny and lightning fast speed. And here's what's happening with all this legislation kicking into place. Here's what the analysts that I follow are saying. One of these days, I don't know how soon it's going to be, we're going to find out that in the background, institutions have been buying XRP. And all of a sudden, we're going to find that there's nothing to buy and the price is going to go up. And the same thing's going to happen with silver. We're going to find that silver, you're not going to be able to buy it. It's just not going to be there. So if you really want to try to protect yourself against what's coming, go do your research and find some place to put some seed in the ground. God wants to bless you.
Yeah, amen. And that's why, and I think you said timing wise, you would like to do $60 of dong, maybe, so in the order. Then maybe get a little bit of XRP so you have some crypto, and invest in silver as well to protect your treasures, things that you want to do. Your own.
And then if you got a lot of money, buy gold. But the thing of it is, not everybody can afford to buy gold. So we need to have alternatives for those who are not very, very wealthy.
Yeah, exactly.
And one last comment. So when all this happens, as we go back into the real estate, I'm going to give you something to chew on for the future. There's going to be something happening. Why is real estate so ungodly expensive? 82% of the population of the United States lives in 2% of the land in the big cities, all bottled up. Technology is making it so that doesn't have to happen anymore. And once this collapse comes out, we're going to see a migration. I'm not sure how big it's going to be, but to intermediate, to small towns, and even out to some rural areas where basically we can pick up land for next to nothing and we can build those planned communities right around the shell of an existing community. And that's another factor that's going to get prices down. And then we can go in using subsidies from the government, from the city and the state and local. And I'll give you one example how we are going to regenerate the big cities. Take Detroit. Massive acreage of lands that are factories that are just rotted, and the houses that used to house those employees rotted, making nothing for the city. If Donald Trump gets behind us and he comes in and he says we're going to allow you to buy that property for $1 or whatever it is, but you've got to rebuild it. And then he comes in and does that same thing where basically he comes in, he builds low-cost housing, he drops a couple of his factories in, maybe he brings in a high-tech solution, and all of a sudden you've got a planned community within the existing city. And here's what he's also going to do. He's going to change the zoning. So right now, the problem that you have is that almost, I think it's 19% of all the land mass within a city, in most instances, can be allowed to build single family homes. So in that area, there were single family homes. So we would have the opportunity to go in and basically create a city within a city that was self-sustaining, a city that had income and that had housing and that was affordable because it was underwritten. So what did Donald Trump and Elon Musk do in every venture they ever got? They picked up distressed properties, they got the government to subsidize them, and they undercut the competition, and they turned dirt into gold.
Mm-hmm. Amen. So
We can win. We can win. There are all kinds of strategies where we not only can, but we will win. So the only thing I want to close with, just do something. So do two things: protect yourself with a little bit of investment, and then create your future, because what they taught you in school, this is the Generation Z's, was meant, like Rick said, to hold you down. So go out and do your own research and think about what's going to happen when all these retail department stores close. We're going to regroup, and we're going to come out with restaurants that are family owned, with boutiques and businesses that are family owned. There are going to be opportunities to step in positions in corporations and in banks and politics, and opportunities for entrepreneurialism for millions of people to have their own companies. And then with that, get yourself some seed in the ground and start to ask yourself, what is it that I do the best? A man who loves what he does, never works a day in his life, and figure out how you can diversify your income streams so that you're not dependent on the government. So what we want to do is we want to end our dependency, and we want to move to a situation where we have flexibility because we have covered ourselves from more than one income stream. So go do your homework, folks. Go out there. The answers are there. It's not complicated. You don't need to have a college degree. All you need to do is just use your common sense, and you'll be able to basically get control of your own future.
amen. The best is
That's all I got for the day.
I want to close in a prayer, if you don't mind, for everybody out there.
Absolutely, always.
Yeah, Heavenly Father, just thank you so much for Larry's insight, Lord. And I just pray you give us wisdom. Give everybody wisdom that's listening to my voice now, whether it's recorded or live, Lord. I just thank you for the time with Larry to be able to dig into this each week as we explain truth versus propaganda, and we put ourselves on a path of the best is yet to come versus the path of no property, eating bugs in an apartment with owning nothing. We say no to that by the mighty name of Jesus. We bind the rulers and authorities and powers of this dark world that are trying to take each of us off our path, and we lose angels of all rank and divisions to help us stay in our path. Or to do that same thing for Larry. Just bless this book. Allow the book to just be an amazing awakening for many people who read it. I give him the wisdom and discernment about what to put in there and what not to put in there, Lord. Just bless that book. Bless his walk, as well as everybody that's listening to my voice's walk. We love you, and we say these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Rick, while you were saying that prayer, I hate to say it, but I thought of something, and I want to add it, if you don't mind.
Problem.
Here's my audience is mostly 50 years and up, but they have sons and daughters and grandkids. And they're many times very discouraged and just sitting around feeling sorry for themselves. So for the sake of Rick's show, for my show, for the whole world, I would ask you to do something. Go grab your son, your daughter, your grandkids by the ear and drag them and say, you need to hear this stuff. You need to hear it. And tell them to set them butts down and listen. And when they listen, they'll see some hope. And when they do, they're really good about getting on the internet and spreading the word. So basically, once you start to find out what the truth is, you millennials, you Generation Zs, share it with everybody. Because here's the thing: the more people you share it with, the more likely you're going to get the massive numbers of people we need to give you the freedom you're looking for. So your destiny is in your hands. It starts with mom and dad. Grab them by the ear, set them down, and nurture them and get them to listen to the truth of what they need to do to basically get back their freedom. They need to be willing to step into the positions that come, and they need to basically be able to figure out how they can be as self-sufficient as possible. I hope you don't mind. I know it's best to close on a prayer, but at the last second, I just thought we got to tell them they got to get a hold of these kids.
Yeah, and this is, remember, this is exclusive. This is exclusive on Faith and Freedom TV. That's Faith with the N, Freedom TV. Make sure you bookmark this. Make sure you come back each week as we dig into new topics. God bless everyone, and thank you.
Bye-bye.
The quantum effect wipes out pain and allergy symptoms in less than 30 seconds with 0 drugs. Pastor Dave and hundreds of others have experienced the quantum effect for themselves. It's backed by scientific research and rigorous lab testing. Quantum is simply about 2 things. 1, intentions, as a man thinketh so he is, and 2, renewing your mind with the Word of God. Only QE Strong encodes key intentions and Bible verses about healing onto the small patch. You simply place it on your body each day, and with a bonus prayer guide, read out loud a positive intention and 1 or 2 Bible verses about healing each day. The patch provides the touch, and the prayer guide uses your sight, speech, and hearing to relieve pain and allergy symptoms with the senses God gave you. It even works for people who have suffered decades of chronic symptoms. Are you ready to experience the quantum effect?
Go to QEstrong.com and use code FAITH.
Economic chaos is shaking the markets. Trade tensions, government overreach, and global uncertainty are driving volatility to historic highs. But in times of crisis, gold and silver shine as safe haven assets just as they have for centuries. Right now, you have a rare opportunity to protect your wealth with Kirk Elliott Precious Metals. Call 720-605-3900 or visit kepm.com/B2T to learn how to reposition your retirement into low-cost 100% liquid gold and silver bullion. No high commission coins, no overpriced collectibles. KEPM educates you, charges no commission when you sell, and keeps your investment secure. Beware of firms pushing rare coins with sky-high markups. Stick with bullion for maximum liquidity and value. Seize this moment to thrive in uncertain times. Call Kirk Elliott Precious Metals at 720-605-3900 or go to kepm.com/B2T today. Real assets, real security, real future.
Terrell Owens here. On the field, I brought energy every single game. But let's be real. Sometimes the fatigue in the brain can make you feel like you're running on fumes. That's where Exodus Strong and their Fatigue to Fire playbook come into play. It's a complete 40-day blueprint with a checklist, an in-depth ebook, plus daily prayer and Bible study guides to rebuild your body, mind, and spirit. Don't wait. Get in the game. To truly get in the game, the one that matters most, you need strength built on a divine foundation, the energy God intended for you. Exodus Strong unites 7 sacred ingredients from Scripture, each chosen for its divine purpose, with breakthrough science that unlocks their power. This is more than a supplement. It's a daily ritual to honor your body and restore the vitality God intended for you. No artificial stimulants, just His perfect design, activated. Join the movement of 1 million believers reclaiming their God-given strength. Your journey begins today. Visit toexodus.com to start your Fatigue to Fire transformation.